Okay, welcome everybody to this first episode of Orion Learning Leaders. Today I'm joined by Stephen Walsh. Stephen, hi.
How you doing, Gavin?
Doing well, doing well. Stephen, perhaps we could start by you telling us a little bit about your journey in learning to date.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, been in learning for about 25 years now. Started my career in the mid 90s in the US, in Chicago, doing some work in early stage e-learning companies, but even before e-learning was even a word, and kind of cut my teeth there as a designer, scriptwriter, project manager, content developer. Moved to the UK, worked for companies in the UK, started a company called Kineo in about 2005, which, along with my colleagues, we grew that to be a global leader in digital learning, so doing content, platforms, consulting, and solutions. Sold that a few years ago, and now I'm the co-founder of Anders Pink. So still in learning, but with a slightly different lens on it, content curation tool that helps people stay up to date on any topic, any day. So, and in between all of that, worked with lots of learning technologies companies, helping them to grow, focus what they're doing, and be successful in the market, and write and blog and talk a lot about it. So yeah, learning for quite a while, and still learning.
Still learning. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
So Stephen, we've got a few quick fire questions today. We're asking the same questions to everybody that we speak to, so that we can gather the answers together as well as learn individually. So we're happy to get started.
Absolutely, go ahead.
So the first question, Stephen, is what does learning that works mean for you?
Learning that works. So I really like the phrase. I know it's kind of close to your hearts at Orion Learning. I suppose I would think about it as, how does it work? Does it work for the learner? Is it giving them an experience that they want? So is it well designed in its own right, whether it's a immersive scenario or just a short focused resource? And it can be both of those things or a combination of those things, or a blend of lots of different things. It needs to work for the learner in terms of helping them to get to where they want to. It needs to work for the organization. You know, we design learning interventions to help improve people's performance, which should add up to deliver a measurable output and result to the organization. So I think it needs to work on two levels: work for me as an individual, and then work for the organization and deliver results. And it's trying to assure both of those things at the same time.
Okay. And when we think about, I suppose, buzzword at the moment is learning experience. You know, the experience of somebody actually, undertaking a piece of learning. What do you think makes a good learning experience from the learner point of view?
I think the word experience itself is a really interesting one, and as you say, we're awash with buzzwords in this industry. What do we mean by experience? I think it can mean different things to different people. I think experience is a subjective word, and I think it goes back to understanding what it is your specific learner or the group of learners that you're trying to support, what they want out of an experience. That's the first thing that will make it a good experience, that it's not massively jarring to them. It's not a 5-hour experience when they need a 5-minute experience, and it's not a course when they don't need a course. So there's a little bit of stepping back and thinking, well, what is the right experience for an individual person? And I think increasingly we want to see people being afforded choice. And we talk a lot about personalization in this industry. I think we are getting better at that, at allowing people to make some choices about the types of experience they want to have, whether they want to watch a 5-minute video, whether they want to listen to a podcast, or whether they're really trying to build a skill and they want a more immersive experience. I think increasingly we're talking about, I'm borrowing a phrase from Nick Shackleton-Jones here, about thinking about, are we designing experiences or are we providing resources? And those things can be quite different. You know, I think a great learning experience should be quite immersive. Yeah, and I think if we're thinking about things like scenarios where you're maybe trying to teach a sales professional how to do a great pitch or negotiate a difficult situation, or trying to train a first-time manager how to have a great coaching conversation with someone, I think that's where you need to think more about the experiential side of it. And to me, that means providing people with clear goals, providing realistic choices to them, having some consequence if they make a mistake within a scenario, and having some meaningful feedback for them. So I think that side is more on the learning scenario and the embedded experience. But it doesn't always have to be like that. And I think sometimes we see in this industry one approach being applied to multiple different performance and development needs, and it might not be the right one. So the right experience for somebody might be, I actually need a PDF that sets out these are the 5 things I need to do or not do in this particular moment. Or it could be just a well-constructed subject matter expert sharing their views for 2 minutes. I think experience really depends on the context you're in and where you're trying to get to. So, I think you can design a great experience that doesn't have to be a full media high production value experience. It can be a curated piece of content. It can be something really specific. I think it's about understanding what the audience needs and designing to that.
Yeah, and do you think at times the industry is guilty sometimes of over-engineering a problem?
Absolutely. I've seen this kind of several cycles of this through my career in the industry. Is we can sometimes be a little technology led. There is a new way of delivering a digital learning experience, and that becomes the default hammer in the toolkit, and everybody is using it because it's there and because it's available. And I think there is sometimes that risk that people in learning and development have perhaps a limited range of ways of delivering experiences, whereas in fact there are lots of different ways of doing this. From the maybe full blended solution down to something very light, very simple, which might even be just a series of pointers or a short video. So I think it is about adding more to your toolkit, having more answers to give to people rather than defaulting to one method. Don't be too attracted to the shiny new technology and assuming that should be led. We shouldn't be technology led. We should be performance led.
You're a man after my own heart, Stephen, because I spend a lot of time saying to people, forget about the technology, focus on the challenge and try and articulate that to us. So yeah. You've obviously helped people, across your career in different ways with all sorts of different learning challenges. Are there any that stand out as being, significant in how you were able to tackle them with learning and sort of the results you were able to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're in the role of trying to create a great, an impactful learning experience, you're trying to solve a problem. I think you're trying to be a good consultant first, and as you said, the how, the technology should follow from that. So I was casting back to from my Kineo days, actually, a solution that we developed for a major retailer, and a retailer that has a lot of cafes in their stores, and they came to us, and it's kind of, it started from a great point because they came saying, look, we know we have a problem. It's a problem that we want to solve. It's a performance problem and it's costing us money. And to me, that's a great place to start because you have a client who is thinking about the right metrics and thinking about changing behavior in order to drive a measurable change in their business. To quickly just kind of go into the background of it. So they had, those mystery diners that go in and kind of anonymously assess how is the restaurant, how's it going. They were not happy with the results they were getting back, and they were getting lots of different data saying I had to wait too long, the person didn't smile, they didn't offer me a cake with my coffee, various different data points kind of up and down the spectrum, and things that might seem minor, maybe irritating, but actually add up if those are happening across a large number of people at scale across an entire organization. They can add up to quite a lot. So we had a lot of data to start with, and I think what was really interesting about that project was, we agreed with the client to say, okay, let's forget about the technology and what the solution is going to look like until we figure out what is the problem that you're trying to solve. To borrow from that, continuous improvements framework. What is the problem? We identified there were, probably 25 areas of improvements that could be made across what the data was showing us from the mystery diners. But if we tried to create a program that solved 25 problems, it would be too long and it would cover too much, and you wouldn't have the impact. So we
probably be replaced by another 5, a few weeks later. Yeah,
exactly. And then other things would come up. So we had a very pragmatic discussion with them, which was more along the lines of, look, what are the top 4, the top 5 really critical issues, and this is sometimes called critical mistake analysis. It's a great framework, I think, for anyone to dig into and think about how to solve a problem. It's look at the incidences, look at how frequently these problems occur, and look at what is the actual cost of these problems, because you might have problems that happen a lot but they don't really matter that much. They're not, really negatively driving people's experience. Or you might have things that happen less frequently, but when they do happen, it has a really big impact. Like someone walks out of the store, So we tried to grade each of those, and we had lots of great data to work with to say, if we focus in on these 4 or 5 key things, these key areas of improvement, that should make a disproportionate difference to the experience and therefore the results. So we designed the solution around that. And I would say, and I've looked back at the solution. Technically, it wasn't that shiny. It wasn't that whiz bang. It was here's 5 situations that we want you to think a little bit differently about. There's a little goal-based scenario in them, so it's replicating what it's like in a cafe, a little bit of audio, a little bit of video, but not loads. It was, and it's quite short. It was only about, I think, 30 minutes or so of learning in total, broken into small episodic pieces. But each one of them was designed to say, when you're in this situation, here's the right way to handle it. Here's, modeling the wrong way to handle it and pointing at the differences between those things. So the solution itself was quite simple, but the analysis to get to the right solution, a lot of effort went into that, which is how I think projects, learning interventions should be. A lot of thinking before you start, deciding what the screen is going to look like or what color the interface needs to be. That stuff, I think it's disproportionate amount of attention.
Let me ask you a question, not Stephen, just, obviously you were working with a larger organization who probably, if I can assume, have people sort of working within data and analytics and maybe able to tap into it. If you transpose that maybe to a smaller organization that maybe doesn't have that luxury, are there any that you could give there of how you could even gather that benchmark to start with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, lots of organizations don't have as much structured data as that organization did. But you can still talk to people. You can still observe behavior. A lot of that project, even though we had that data, the team who was working on it went to cafes and sat and watched, talked to people, talked to managers, saw what was working or what wasn't working, saw when a table wasn't being cleared quickly enough. So I think you can be your own data analyst on this, even if it's a smaller organization with a small set of data. Anecdotal data, is a good substitute for, lots of quantifiable information. And if you talk to the right people who've been around long enough and who've observed trends and behaviors, that's a great place to start. Just talking to subject matter experts, saying, if you could change one thing, if there's one, mistake that's being made or one opportunity that's being missed, what would it be? That's gold if you're trying to create a learning solution. And I would say, if you don't have that information, and you're starting to think about design and content without really understanding the problem that you're trying to solve, you're starting from the wrong place. So and that's why, be performance-led, don't be technology-led.
Yeah. So Stephen, when you've actually created the solution, obviously, it's just sitting there. There's still, we encourage people to really think about the engagement, of getting their learning out there and promoting it. Would you have any tips for people? They've designed their beautifully data-driven solution. They've got the right instructional approaches in there. What comes next, or what advice would you give for the next stage?
I would say, I think back to the example I was telling you about what came next in terms of promoting and marketing it. And I think it's about not just thinking about what comes next, it's about thinking about that while you are developing it, thinking about, how can we effectively campaign for behavior change. And I think this is where we can borrow a leaf from our friends in marketing. I've spent a lot of time in marketing within the organizations I've been involved with as well. And marketing and learning are more aligned than they may appear on the surface. They're both about how do we affect behavior and performance change, and how do we do that through effective, sustained campaigns. So if you're in an organization, we've got someone who has a marketing role, get them involved, because this is what they think about all the time. How do you effectively promote things? A couple of things that I saw worked really well on that project. Having a passionate champion within the organization. The head of retail was really behind this project, and he made a lot of noise about it. He made a lot of noise at exec level throughout the organization, ran road shows to introduce people to it, let them know it was coming, did a little bit of teasing, this is going to be a different experience for you. We're going to fix 5 things that's going to change the organization and make your life better. I mean, I think going back to the what's in it for me is so important for learners as well. This is not being done to you. This is going to help you. This is going to help make your job better, more enjoyable, easier. Finding the right messages around that, which is sometimes difficult because sometimes we have to talk a lot about compliance and regulation and rules. That's a big part of what we all cover in learning. But there are still ways of making that sound more like support and tools to enable people, not trying to stop them doing things. So it's about finding the right language, finding subject matter experts or advocates in the organization who will be champions of it. I think another thing that works really well from a marketing perspective is get quick successes, get people who've had a great experience with the learning and ideally great results from that learning, and communicate that back to the rest of the organization. We're not always great at L&D about being self-promotional and being marketers. I think a lot of us are introverted in this industry and don't like making a lot of noise, but you do have to make some noise. You do have to communicate the benefits, show that you're making a difference, and sustain that over a period of time in whatever channels are going to get people's attention in the organization.
So you're touching on my last set question there. Obviously we're speaking to lots of people. Learning leaders is a broad term. Some people, I say, are industry experts. Some are working maybe at a project level within an organization. But what would your recommendations be to that aspiring learning leader out there? The person who wants to, get a reputation for delivering learning that works. What would your advice be to them to develop that reputation?
I would say be a great learner yourself first. And I don't mean that to be facetious. I really do believe that. I think, there was a good article in Harvard Business Review a few years ago that said that the best leaders are the best learners. Recognize that the industry that we're in, the learning sector, it's a fantastic and exciting place to be, and it's changing a lot. There's always new approaches, there's new technology, and as we were saying earlier, you have to, approach any new technology with a kind of a pinch of salt. Make sure you understand what the purpose of it is, what it enables, rather than the tech in itself. There are always great new articles, webinars, great content being published. You have to stay on top of that. You need to become an expert in your own domain first and foremost, and you need to continuously learn. You need to be the example that you want to instill in the rest of the organization, and show that you're continuously developing and exploring and experimenting with new things. So I think that you need that learning mindset. I think you need to be a great consultant. And again, I know that's an easy word to say. What I mean in practice by that is, don't be an order taker. Don't be the person who says, whatever problem you have in the organization, I will solve it the same way I did it last time. And I know from speaking to learning leaders on client sides, there's tremendous pressure from business who maybe are funding the learning to say, give me another one of those that I had last time, whether that's a classroom session or a recorded webinar or a short e-learning course. Your role, I think, as a leader is to say, there's actually a different way. Have you thought about doing it like this? And obviously to do that, you need to have other options that you can present to people. And that's going back to, being a great learner and being able to bring in new ideas and new thinking around the organization, and to say, let's try this, let's experiment with this, find the safe places to pilot and experiment different approaches in the organization. So I think being a great consultant, and then being a great partner as well, building your network internally and externally. I think sometimes in L&D and organizations, you can feel a little bit out on a wing, a little bit siloed, but you shouldn't need to be. You should be really well connected into the business, into whoever's in the front line. You should be really connected to your marketing team. If anyone is responsible for data in your organization, you should be tapping into them as well. And you should be saying, we're all trying to do the same things here. Let's work together on that, and include them in your projects. And then building your network on places like LinkedIn and Twitter. If you want to be a great learning leader, be an active contributor there. The learning community is very open to people, as it's called, kind of working out loud, learning out loud, sharing your ideas, asking for input and advice. It's a very collegiate place to be. So working on your consulting skills, working on your own continuous learning, and building your network, I think, are three important things in developing your own leadership as a learner.
So there's lots of transferable skills there, Stephen, whether you're in learning or not. No matter what role you're in, and you want to get a reputation for being good at your role, being a good team player, being a good asset to the organization.
Yeah, I would say they transfer to any role, I would imagine. Yeah.
Maybe in closing, Stephen, it would be amiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Anders Pink, particularly seeing as we've worked together in providing it to a number of Orion client projects in our portals. I suppose my question on Anders Pink and content curation is, where did the idea for the tool come from? What prompted you to take action there?
So I'd spent a lot of time in the industry creating courses. I put my hand up and say, that was my kind of what I did every day for kind of 20 years of my career is, try to solve learning problems by creating blended learning experiences. And I still think that's absolutely valid and right way to do it. But going back to what we were saying earlier, it's not the only way to do it. Sometimes what people really need is just to stay up to date on what's happening. I think this is particularly true for people who are maybe a bit more experienced in their careers, who don't need kind of a structured program, but need to know if my clients or if my competitors are doing something, I need to know about it now. Or if there's a new trend emerging in the industry, I want to stay up to date on that. So the idea came about that, really, I suppose, through kind of my own kind of challenge with doing that, because I try to practice everything I've just preached to you about being a good continuous learner, staying up to date. It's not easy to do that because, even if you Google digital learning or even gamification, you're going to get, 50 million results. You just don't have time to do that. If you try to troll through Twitter or LinkedIn, it's a lot of noise on those platforms as well. So the idea came from, well, how can we help people who want to continuously learn, whether those are individuals or teams or whole organizations, bring in a feed of good quality, trusted content that stays up to date, that can complement a blended program, but can help them to stay up to date and be more of a kind of a learning at the point of need rather than a deep dive into a particular subject. So that was the kind of the genesis of the idea. And as you say, you've been fortunate to work with you guys and many of your clients to plug it in to help augment the learning experience. And it can be one of those things that, we were talking about a few minutes ago about being a good consultant. Sometimes the right answer is, let's not create something, let's curate something. It's faster, it's a lot more cost effective, and it can serve a need. So that's what we're trying to do, just be a little bit different in the learning offer.
Yeah, well, I think that's been the biggest thing why I appealed, for some of our projects, was actually the change that it has on the role of the L&D facilitator internally, that they can actually take an active role in curating content. So that almost forces you to, who are my trusted sources? Where can I pull articles or videos? Which social influencers do I want to share with my colleagues? So it's certainly been very beneficial, particularly for some of our international projects, the automated nature of it. Well, that brings us to a close, Stephen. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. For everyone watching, this is the first in a series of Learning Leaders videos. So we'll chatting to lots of industry figures, lots of people working in small, medium, and large organizations, and we'll be looking at what learning that works means for them and how they've tackled challenges head on through learning. Thanks a lot.